This is the 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz, and this thing is an absolute beauty. Now, it does have two different engine choices that are available, depending on whether you're in Canada or the US. So that's the kicker there. Now, this is just going to be a quick walk around going through some of the basics. So what's going on underneath the hood, bed dimensions, inside the vehicle, and a few other things. If you're looking for more of an in-depth look at the technology, check down in the description below as well. Now, on top of that, I have to give Ajax Hyundai a huge shout out and a thank you for letting me use this truck to shoot the video for you today. Look down in the description as well for their contact info. But let's dive into it. Let's have a little bit of fun and figure out what's going on with the brand new Santa Cruz. All right, now starting off with some exterior styling, I absolutely love the look of this truck. Like something small like the fender here, it's actually kind of pushed down a little bit. Really useful because if you're going off-road and getting mud picked up, it literally, well, hypothetically should kind of push everything off. We've got wheel well liners for the front as well as for the rear. Now, there are a couple things that are unique about this truck. So along the side, we've got a Santa Cruz badge, as long as a badge right along the top there. Now, that's something you're not going to find from the factory. It's available as an aftermarket install. The guys at Ajax Hyundai have literally set themselves up with a guy who does this work. So I absolutely love the look of it. It really makes it pop. But looking at some things that are standard from the factory, tire-wise, we've got either 18 or 20-inch tires, depending on which trim level of the vehicle you look at. Looking at the front of the vehicle here, we've got our hidden daytime running lamps, which this thing looks absolutely beautiful with the grille they've got set up here. A lip along the bottom there looks great. And then we've also got a dual headlight setup there as well, which I absolutely love what Hyundai's done with this thing. Like really surprised that their first kind of like foray into the compact truck market, this is what they've come up with. One thing that is unique is what's going on with the actual drivetrain. Because this thing is available either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, which stark comparison to what you would normally find inside of trucks. Usually it's rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. So it is kind of nice to know that we've got some options there. All right, let's take a peek underneath the hood of the vehicle. Here we go. All right, so first impressions, this thing looks pretty nice. We've got a little cover along the top. There's a little engine cover hiding off some of those mechanical components that for whatever reason people don't like looking at, but this thing looks really nice. Now, when it comes down to the engine choices themselves, there are two different choices available for the Santa Cruz, and that's going to depend on if you're in Canada or the States. Because up in Canada, we only have the 2.5-liter turbocharged engine that we're looking at here. Down in the States, you also do have the 2.5-liter naturally aspirated, so the non-turbocharged engine. And the power between them is actually pretty substantial. Like the 2.5 liter, so the regular engine, is going to push at 191 horsepower and 181 pound-feet of torque, which is pretty respectable. But when we look at this 2.5 liter turbocharged engine, it's going to push out 281 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. So tons and tons of power when it comes down to it. Now, when it comes down to either the 2.5 naturally aspirated or the turbocharged, they're both an 8-speed automatic transmission as well. And one of the cool things underneath the hood, we've got really easy access to a number of things, which is nice because this truck does sit a little bit lower. Now looking, we can easily top up some fluids if we need to, more than easily check our oil, and then we've also got easy access to the battery. Now moving to the back of the vehicle, I love what Hyundai's done with the styling of this thing. Like beautiful look for our tail lamps. And as we start to move down, we've got some pretty cool things. Like we've got built-in steps there as well if we want to kind of get into the box, and it's not too high up, which is definitely a nice thing. Now, towing wise inside of this vehicle, we can get that hitch receiver and then that 4-7-pin wiring harness aftermarket. Getting that installed, you're going to have up to 5,000 pound towing capacity. It's going to be 3,500 pound towing capacity inside of front wheel drive and 5,000 pound in all wheel drive. Definitely a nice thing. So plenty of power and pulling power inside of this, which is kind of a nice thing. Now, payload inside of this truck, we've got around 1,500 and change up to, I think it's 1,906. So 1,906 pound maximum when you're in the base model of the truck. Now, that is taken with a grain of salt because max payload is great, but what that's not taking into account is what else do you have inside the truck? Like if you've got 1,000 pounds of stuff in the back, so gravel, things like that, that's going to take away from your overall payload. If you're pulling something, you're pulling a trailer or boat, whatever the case may be, whatever the tongue weight is, that's also going to take away from your payload rating. So definitely something to think about. Like, yeah, this thing's got a 5,000 pound towing capacity with an up to 1,900 pound payload capacity, but everything is going to kind of of affect one or the other. So we've got, 1,000 pounds inside of the payload, our towing's gonna drop. We've got, a bunch of people inside, things inside of the bed of the truck, etc. It's gonna take away from our overall payload capacity. So that's definitely something to think about. But again, if you're just looking for a truck that you can kind of take around for a daily driver with occasionally having to pull some things and grab some things, I think the Santa Cruz is a really nice option. Now, we also do have a few cameras that are strategically placed around the vehicle as well. So we've got one right along the back, there's one just a little bit further up, and then across our side view mirrors, which gives us a really nice view of the vehicle as well. We can control that from the inside view, which I'll show you that one in just a second. Now, I do think Hyundai is actually kind of brilliant the way that they designed this as well. They actually threw the mini spare tire underneath the truck. So it's definitely a huge benefit because let's say if you've got a payload full of gravel, if you pop a tire, the last thing you want to have to do is take out that 1,000 pounds of gravel to get to the spare. So having it underneath the truck instead is definitely a good thing. And we've got the actual lock for it just right in the back, right to the right-hand side of the license plate. So definitely a smart thing on Hyundai's part. All right, now taking a peek at some standard technology. So we've got our backup camera that's going to be standard there regardless. Now on top of that, we do also have our blind spot monitoring system there. So let's know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle. We've got other things like our adaptive cruise control, so that smart cruise feature, and a number of other things that we'll get into in just a moment. All right, now getting into the bed of the truck, we've got a couple different options. So if we take a look underneath the Hyundai badge, we do technically have the option of pressing that in order to be able to get in the back. But what do? Your hands are full, your keys in your pocket, whatever the case may be. We can actually take a look at the fob there, and we've got a little button. So just underneath, as you can see, just next to our horn button, we do have this button here. So we're literally just gonna hold. Watch this. Oh, down it goes. So auto down, and now one nice thing, yes, it is auto down, but we do have to manually lift it back up again. Moving up a tiny little bit. So a few things to point out first and foremost. So we do have a nice Hyundai badge just along the back there, and we can open up the tailgate literally just to the back. We're just gonna pull that handle. Nice slow release, which is always a good thing. Now we do have a retractable cover for this as well. So we do have, same thing, another little Hyundai badge along the top. We're just gonna push that in. Retract, retract! Ah, all right. So it's an auto-retracting tonneau cover, which is kind of a nice thing, which means we don't have to look at anything aftermarket. It literally is built right in. Definitely a nice touch. Now, there is quite a little bit of space back here for the size of the vehicle. So I'm actually just gonna flip you over so you can take a peek at the cargo dimensions, but before, the bed dimensions. But before I do, there are a few things to point out. So just along the side there, we do have a few lights. We can literally pop this guy open as well, and we've got a few other things. So we do have a little, this is actually kind of neat. We've got a 150 watt power point in the back here. So our traditional wall outlet, so if we want to power some things up, we can easily do that. Along the other side, there is another one there as well, and that's just a tiny little storage compartment. So again, same thing, nice kind of hidden features that Hyundai's included inside of this thing, gives it a nice touch. We do have a few different tie downs as well, so we've got 4 main ones, and then we've got another one along the side there. Now, one other thing to point out, like I said, this truck is not too high off the ground, but I'm also 6 feet tall, so it is technically easy enough for me to reach the majority of this thing. But one of the great things about the Santa Cruz is that we do have a built-in step along the side, and that's gonna be on both the driver-passenger side, and we can literally launch ourselves up in order to get into the back of the truck. So that's definitely a nice thing. Now, one other thing to point out, what's going on in the back here. All right, so taking a peek along the back here, it is pretty nice because the bed here is technically finished. I mean, you could get an aftermarket WeatherTech spray if you wanted a tiny bit more protection there, but I want you to watch something for a second because we've got a little area here, so we can just literally pop this thing open. Look at this, look at this, look at this. Ah, all right. So we literally have, you could technically use it as a bit more storage space, or you could use it for its intended purpose, which literally would be to use this thing as a cooler. Now, that is definitely a nice touch and definitely forward thinking because we also have a little drain plug along the bottom here. So you're going tailgating, whatever the case may be, have yourself loaded up there and you can literally drain this thing out before you hit the road again. All right, so the bed dimensions for the truck are going to be showing up. So as you can see there, we have a nice amount of width, depth, and height to this thing, which is actually kind of a nice thing. Now, it's not going to be as much as you get inside of a half-ton or a full utility truck, but for a truck that, you can drive as a daily driver downtown Toronto, those congested streets, this is actually a pretty nice size. Now, a few things to point out, you will lose a little bit of space in the back because of the tonneau cover there. So it's a built-in retractable, and it doesn't look like it's overly easy, maybe easy enough to remove. We've just got a couple things there. So I guess technically you could pull the tonneau cover out if you wanted to, but you lose about 6 inches of space there just because of the sizing difference between where the back of the truck is and then where we've got the retractable part of the tonneau cover. But it does have a nice amount of space though. And one of the cool things is that we can keep this thing down. I do believe we do have a few options for some aftermarket accessories for bed extenders and things like that, so you can get a little bit more depth there as well. Next up, taking a peek at the key fob of the vehicle. So really nice look, typical Hyundai fashion. So we've got our logo along the back. We've got our emergency access key in the back there as well, so just simple button press in order to gain access to that. Along the front of the fob, we've got our lock button, our unlock button, our bed release, our horn or panic alarm button, as well as our remote start. So that's one of the cool things, because we can remote start, we can do our bed release as well directly from the key fob. And in order to remote start this thing from the fob, all we're gonna do is press the lock button just to make sure the truck is locked, and we're just gonna press and hold the OK button there in the middle, so that circle button. So as you can see now, the truck is now remote started. To cancel the remote start, you're just gonna press that circle button there, so that hold button again once. Taking a peek, filling up fuel inside of this thing just along the driver's side, and the actual door itself is not lockable, but we do have a cap along the top there. So you could technically, if you're really worried about fuel theft, look at an aftermarket device in order to kind of lock in the fuel instead, but I mean, that's ultimately going to be your choice. When it comes down to the fuel quality, regular 87 gas is all you need. So minimum manufacturer's recommendation is just your 87 octane. Do you need to use a higher premium fuel? Absolutely not, but if you do, you'll notice a tiny bit of performance boost when you do that. Right now, taking a peek at second row spacing, I am actually kind of surprised at how much space is back here. Like, I'm 6 feet tall, driver's seat set up for somebody who's 6 feet tall, and I've got a nice amount of knee space, good amount of foot space, and up overhead, so nice. I've got like almost 3.5 inches of head space. So definitely nice to know that people that are sitting in the back here are going to have more than enough space for their head. Now, there are quite a few things in the back here, definitely a nice thing. So we do have some cup holders along both of the side doors. We've got our basics, so we've got our window up and down. We've got a couple handles there and a hook along both sides. Now, other thing to point out, right along the very top, we've got our cabin lighting, so we can control that from the back here. In behind both the driver passenger first row seats, we've got a few cargo nets, so we can store a few extra things. And then we've got a few power points. So we've got 2 USB ports just right along the very bottom, which means we can power some things up fairly easily. Now, moving back a tiny bit more, we do have a manual sliding rear window. So definitely a nice touch there, so we can kind of create some cross breeze if we'd like to. If you've got kids in car seats, rear facing shouldn't be an issue here because we've got a few latches there, and then we've also got the top tether along the seats there as well. So you've got a front facing, rear facing child seat. You shouldn't have an issue getting the child seat back here. And just depending on how tall people in the front seats are, but like I said, shouldn't be an issue if you just adjust the seats as necessary. But overall, I'd say I'm fairly impressed with the styling of this. Now, there are a couple of neat things about these seats. So we do have a few latches right along both side seats, so we can pull this up, and we've got a little bit of storage space underneath my seat, and underneath this other seat we've got our jack there as well. So really nice to know that if we need a little bit of extra storage space, we've got it, because one of the cool things, we technically could pull this whole jack stand out if we wanted to, and we've got even more storage space underneath the seat. So I, again, love the look of this. I love what Hyundai's done with it. They've given us a nice amount of storage space, and there's great styling as well. And one of the cool things is that these seats do lock up into place as well. So if you've got both seats up, you can store bigger boxes and things like that back here, no problem, without having to worry about the seat kind of moving forward on you by itself. Right now, taking a peek along our driver's side door. So we do have a little button on the outside there, and that's a smart lock. So we can unlock or lock the doors simply by pressing that button. As we hop inside, tons of features here. So we've got our basics. We've got a nice, beautiful styling for the actual handle itself. I actually love all the small touches that Hyundai's done with this thing. Moving along the side, along the top there, as you can see, we can adjust our side view mirrors. We've got our basics for our window control as well. Tiny little bit of storage space along both the driver and passenger side door there. As we start to move on the inside, so we've got a series of different buttons along the left-hand side. Increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster screen. We can turn on our bed lighting, and we can turn our traction control system on or off as well if we need to. We do have a manual adjusting steering wheel, so we would just adjust there as necessary. And then we've got a series of different switches down below for our driver's seat. Moving just to the left-hand side of the pedals there, you can see we've also got our hood latch. So in order to get underneath the hood, we're just going to give that a crank. Now moving into the front row, I absolutely love the look of this, love the styling of it. The headrest is super comfortable there. Adjustable on multiple levels all at the same time. And then, okay, so it's on the inside in order to be able to lower it down again. So really nice. We can't pull it forward, so it is locked into place there, but we can at least move it up and down to our liking. Now, quite a lot of stuff to point out here. And firstly, I've got to say, I love the digital dash inside of this thing. So we've got a digital cluster screen, beautiful multimedia screen here as well. But a couple things to point out. This is just going to be a quick walk around of the interior of the vehicle. If you're looking for a fuller look at the vehicle, specifically on how maybe all of these buttons work on the steering wheel and how to navigate the cluster screen, or how to use the media screen itself, so setting up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, using navigation, things like that, check down in the description below because I have put together a video specifically on how each of these systems work. So you don't have to kind of drag through things if you don't necessarily want to, but let's at least go through some of the basics. So on the steering wheel itself, our stick on the left-hand side is going to let us figure out what's going on with our running lamps. We can also flash our high beams, lock them out if we need to. Along the right side, that lets us figure out exactly what's going on with our windshield wipers, so pretty straightforward there. And we've also got paddle shifters inside this thing, so so nice, and I am so excited to be trying that out. Because if we kind of look at that in conjunction with our shifter, yeah, we've got our traditional park, reverse, neutral, drive modes, but we've also got a manual mode. So if we are in our drive mode, we just slap the stick over to the side, and we can literally adjust what gear we're in as we go. So definitely a nice touch that we've got that option. Now, a few things to point out. We've got a series of different buttons on the left-hand side, typical of what we'd see in Hyundai vehicles. We've got our voice command prompt, so we can do things like change radio stations, we can navigate using our voice, make phone calls, things like that. If we were hooked up through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, like on the Apple side of things, we could use it as our Siri Assistant button as well. We've got a few different mode buttons and star button, which means that we can literally create a customized button, more or less can do anything we'd like it to. Answer or hang up on a phone call, and our basic for volume control. This thing also does have the Smart Cruise system. So the Smart Cruise is essentially a set it and forget it cruise control. Like let's say if you set it at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, if the car in front of you slows down, yours is automatically going to brake. There's a lane centering system in there as well, which literally is going to keep you in your lane as you go, as long as it recognizes the lane markings. Now, because of the package of the vehicle that we're in, this one does have heated and ventilated front seats. So definitely a nice thing. Now, one other thing to note, those back seats are never going to be heated. So regardless of whatever trim level you're in, Canada, US, etc., can't get second row heated seats as of yet. I'm hoping, Hyundai, if you hear this, that would be a really cool feature to include there in the back if you could, keeping it at this price point. But looking at some of the other basics, I love the look of the steering wheel there. Really nice look. Adjusting the steering wheel itself is a manual process inside of the vehicle lineup across every trim level, and it's a telescopic wheel as well, which is definitely a nice thing. The seats, that's where things are a little bit different. So we are going to be a manual adjust on the passenger and a power adjustable in the driver's seat, again, depending on the trim, but we can literally go forwards, backwards, up and down with that first lever. Next one will bring the actual seat forwards and backwards there. And then we've got our two-way power lumbar support as well. Now, one thing to note, with the seat down all the way back, so down all the way back, I've got about 4 inches of headroom before my head hits the top part of this, but this vehicle also does have a sunroof. Hello! So, I mean, if you're a little bit taller, you could kind of shoot yourself over a little bit if you needed to create a tiny little bit of extra space, but I mean, 6'4", 6'5", you'll probably still comfortably be able to sit inside of this thing, so definitely a nice touch. Now, the media screen itself, so I'm just going to fire this car up for a second because this thing looks beautiful. Drive safely and obey the traffic rules. Yes, I will. But really great look to it. We do have factory navigation. Well, let's turn this fan down a teeny little bit. All right, so we do have factory navigation inside this vehicle, which is great, but if you have a tendency to maybe use Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze, you can hook up through Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in order to be able to use one of your phone maps instead. So you've got a little bit of flexibility there. So again, really nice look there. If you're again looking for, again, more of a little bit of an in-depth walk around, look down below for that video instead. But we've got a nice touch button along the top there, adjust our volume, and it is kind of neat what they've decided to do with the actual display here. It looks really sharp. We've got a really nice setup for our climate control settings, and one of the nice things, dual zone climate control. So if somebody's going to kind of argue with you over what the temperature should be, you can at least adjust it one way or the other if you wanted to. We've got our sync button, which is going to default it back to the driver's side. We've got our basic for our diffuser, as well as our rear defroster, which is definitely a nice thing. Now moving down a tiny little bit, we've got a few USB power points. One of them is to actually use devices through USB. The other one is actually just for charging purposes. We've got a 12-volt power point there, so a traditional cigarette lighter adapter would work there. And there also is a wireless charging pad, so always a nice thing to have that pad. And then there is a little indicator light letting us know when we've got a phone on that charge pad. Moving down a tiny little bit more, we've got a few cup holders there. And then with the shifter, so as I mentioned, we've got our park reverse neutral drive, so our standard, and then it also does have a manual mode by flipping the gear shifter over to the side once you're in drive. But the actual styling and the aesthetics of the actual shifter is really, really nice. Like grips comfortably along the hand there as well, always a nice thing. Now down below that a tiny little bit more, we've got another little switch that's going to let us switch between either our drive or our terrain modes. So our drive modes, typical inside of Hyundai styling, we've got our normal, sport, and then our smart mode, which does something unique to the actual cluster screen itself. Like I love the way that what they've done with the sport mode, just the look of it, like it is absolutely beautiful. And again, it just kind of reinforces that idea of the sportier performance, because that's exactly what sport mode does. It's going to hang on to the RPMs, so it's going to let your RPMs rev up a little bit higher between each shifting point, which gives it a much sportier feel. It's kind of interesting. I was in the Kona Electric a couple days ago, and that thing also had a sport mode. But when I was in sport mode, the car was so powerful that the front tires almost had trouble with traction because of it. Like it was actually it was really neat. But if you want to watch the test drive video of that, look down below as well. But there are a few different other options, because when we get into the other side, we've got our terrain mode. So we've got things like our snow, mud, and a sand mode as well. And each mode for all of these is going to do something different. Like when we're in the mud mode, it's going to have our hill descent control on there. Our sand mode, brake assist is going to be on there as well. Our downhill brake control is going to be off. We've got a snow mode, which is going to play with our traction and stability control as well. So each mode is going to do something different. Looking off to the side there as well, we also do have our downhill brake control. There's the auto hold setting, which I always talk about the auto hold setting because I love it so much. But what that means is if you come to a complete stop and you're in drive, you take your foot off the brake, car's going to hold in place. We also do have our 360 camera button, and that is one of the beautiful things about this trim level of the vehicle. We've got our front-facing camera, side view mirror cams, as well as a camera in the back there, and we can switch between the view that we want, which is kind of neat. Like we've got a bed view for the vehicle, we've got our rear view camera, and then there's kind of like a split view so we can see what's going on beside us as well. So really, really nice that we've got that flexibility. We can push that to get rid of it again. Electronic parking brake inside of the vehicle, and then, as I mentioned, heated and ventilated front seats. As I see a B there, I'm like, B! So we've got heated and ventilated front seats inside of this trim level of the vehicle as well, and there also is a heated steering wheel. Now we do have a little button there for our armrest, and opening that up, we've got a tiny little bit of storage space, and that's about it. So there are no extra power points or anything like that inside of this. Now, as we start to move up overhead, we do have an auto-dimming rear view mirror, and then there are, so we've got our home link buttons up there as well. So if you've got a garage door opener at home, we can easily program in the codes if we need to. We can call a tow, we've got our SOS, and then we can control our cabin lights on there as well. And then because this thing's got a sunroof, we can, so we can't, we can. Oh, that's so cool. I was in the Kona the other day. I didn't even realize it could do that. So you can vent this thing out. Literally all you're gonna do is just push the button up and it can vent it out, and we can just close that down, or we can literally slide the whole roof open there as well. So, let there be light. And we can easily close it up. So one button press, open, close there, which is definitely a nice thing. And the actual shade itself is manual. Over and above that, so we do have our visor with our controllable light. So we've got the vanity mirror there, and we can also extend this thing out a tiny little bit if we need to. Click it, log it back into place. And that is going to be the basics of the vehicle. So like I said, overall, I am thoroughly impressed, because on top of having such great technology, we've got incredible sound. We've got a Bose speaker system inside of this specific trim of the vehicle. Sounds absolutely incredible, as well as a number of standard technology features. So things like our blind spot indicators, so blind spot assist, we've got our lane keeping system, we've got our lane follow system. There is a ton of stuff inside this truck. But let's take it out for a quick spin and see how it handles on the road. This is gonna be exciting for a couple of reasons. Like I've currently got it in sport mode, so it's gonna have a teeny bit of a sportier performance. Ooh, this is gonna be good. Yeah, you can hear like immediately it just like revs the engine. It's like, oh hello, I'm awake. Here we go. Okay, that was nice. All right, so I just want to have like a reference point. So I'm just going to go to the normal mode for a second, just to see what it's going to be like going from the normal mode into the sport mode, because I like that. I love the initial kind of feeling that I got from that. That was nice. That was really nice. Okay, yeah, definitely like a night and day difference in the feeling between sport mode and regular mode. Like, don't get me wrong, the regular mode is still very, very nice, just because it's a 2.5 liter, I'm driving the 2.5 liter turbocharged engine. So it's got a surprising amount of power. Well, I'm actually gonna go from a little bit of a stop because this thing's already broken in, which is always a nice thing. Okay, and I am using the Smart Cruise feature right now as well. And distance indicator, there we go. Okay, mid-distance indicator. Perfect, so it's literally kind of keeping me balanced in my lane there. Okay, lane markings have kind of disappeared here. Let's see what it does. All right, so it kind of got confused for like the briefest of seconds there. And it's just because the lane split. So it was kind of like, what am I supposed to do? Just something to keep in mind, that it can lose you for a brief second if you're kind of bouncing in between lanes, lane split, whatever the case may be. So definitely keep that in mind. Oops, I love that. I love it. I love it when people do that. Guy like gets over into his lane to like aggressively try to pass one or two people and like realizes last second, he's like, oh, my lane is ending right now. So good, so good. Patience, people. Patience pays off big time. Okay, I'm gonna try the adaptive, or the Smart Cruise system there again as well. There it is. Ah, Smart Cruise, conditions not met. Okay, so you gotta be going a minimum. I wonder if it's probably 60. Yeah, that's exactly, yeah, you've gotta be going, by the look of it, at least 60 kilometers an hour. Yeah, that's exactly it for the Smart Cruise system to activate. All right, Smart Cruise is on. Lane markings, there we go. And like, look, Ma, no hands, there's a little bend in the road. My hands are still kind of hovering over the wheel, but it literally is keeping me centered in the lane. Like, that is so cool. It's so cool. I love it. I love it so much. And we're coming up to a stop as well, so I'm curious how responsive it's going to be to brake. All right, fair enough. That was good. And we have got a beast of a car in front of us right now. Oh, look at that old school Hummer. That is wild. Oh, that is a classic. It's like the old school Simpsons commercial. Camionero, Camionero. Yeehaw! So ridiculous. So ridiculous. That is nice though. That is really nice. And speaking of nice, let's put her back into sport mode. And 3, 2, and... Woo! All right. All right, that was nice. Oh, that was great. Unexpectedly nice. Here we go. That is nice. Wow, that's nice. Oh, that is nicer. Damn, look at these houses. Whew. Now, obviously, like I said, I'm not towing anything, so I don't have a trailer or a boat or anything like that in behind me. Nothing in the bed of the truck, so payload isn't too much. But even still, inside of the turbocharged engine, there is a heck of a lot of power, and I absolutely love it. Oh, this is so cool. Oh no, his bike stalled out. Oh, I should say his trike stalled out, because he's definitely got a trike, not a bike. But oh, that's unfortunate. It's never fun when that happens. You go again. Oh, that's sport mode. All right, that's it. Like, I've said it for so many different cars, and like this just reiterates that fact. You want to keep yourself in sport mode the majority of the time if you're like me and you prefer like a sportier type of a performance, because it's definitely like a night and day feeling. So you'll definitely get a better feel for it when you're in that sport mode. I love it. You're never gonna hear me not talk about sport mode now. I'm gonna try it out every single time on every single car. Like I typically do anyways, but it's like a for sure thing now. Like just because of the night and day driving experience, the difference there, like it is so nice. I love it. I love this technology. Like I'm such a child when I play around. And like, so here's the kicker. I haven't been in like Teslas yet either, which like is full self-driving. And like, if I'm this excited about like base features, like lane centering, I can only imagine how crazy I'm gonna go when I get behind a car that actually can drive itself. Oh, this is great. Nice, nice, nice. I'm glad this thing is broken in. Means that we can have a little bit more fun with it. So it's typically what you're going to want to do, like first 1,000 kilometers or so. You want to drive it a little bit more carefully than you normally would, just so you can get all the fluids going and get everything going. It's break-in period going to be the same way for every type of a vehicle, but is it like overall first impressions of this compact truck? Like I am blown away at what it offers. And one of the nice things about this one compared to some of the others out in the market, like positioning of the mini spare tire, I think is key, because in this one, it's actually underneath the truck, which is super, super smart. Like, could it get dirty? Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing you don't think of is if the spare tire is actually in the truck bed, what happens if that thing's loaded up and you pop a tire? You're kind of SOL. Like, you got to think about these small things when you're choosing any sort of a car, and like that is definitely no exception. So, I still can't go over that blind spot monitoring system. Every time I see a car with it, I love it. It is such a cool feature. It's like, yeah, we've got our blind spot monitors. I can turn my head, sure, but just to kind of do a quick glance back behind you to see what's going on, so useful. Well, folks, that was a look at the 2022 Hyundai Santa Cruz Ultimate. What did you think? Like, this thing is super loaded for what you get, the price point that you get, and the feature set that you get inside of it as well. But if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below and let me know. If you enjoyed the video, definitely give it a like and think about subscribing and share it with your social networks. And until see you next time, take care. Now, one cool thing about this truck, it's got a manual sliding rear view mirror. Now, one other nice thing about this truck is that it's got a manual sliding rear mirror. Come on, it's a window, dude. Now, moving into the first row of the vehicle, again, same thing. I love the look of this. Super, super comfortable, like especially this headrest.